Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good evening. Welcome to the Primetime Asia. This Saturday night will bring you some of Asia Pacific's latest happenings over the week, beginning with the follow-up of a suicide bomb attack in Afghanistan that killed at least 33 people in Jalalabad. President Ashraf Ghani has blamed the IS militants for that devastating act. On the other hand, Iran has agreed with Australia to share intelligence to track foreign fighters working with the IS group in Iraq. Japan's minister in charge of TPP negotiations and the US trade representative have begun a second day of talks in Tokyo on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Pact. Meanwhile, Taiwan and southern Japan has been shook by a strong undersea earthquake struck, which triggered an advisory for a tsunami of up to 1 meter in Japan and caused buildings in Taipei to sway. We also bring you other latest news from Peru and China. Here is Henry Ramaner with the reports.
Following a suicide blast that killed at least 33 people in the eastern city of Jalalabad, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is blaming the IS militants responsible for the horrendous act without giving further details. The bloody blast also injured more than 100 people, leaving civilians fighting for their lives in a local hospital. Some of the victims were wondering how it happened in the first place. A victim, Bashir Jan, said he was around the area when the explosion happened and saw many innocent people lying on the ground. The blast shook an area outside a bank where government workers collect their monthly salaries. Local media reported a spokesman for a group claiming to represent the IS said the militant carried out the attack. These claims cannot be immediately verified, but if it is found true, it would be the first such major attack carried out by the IS in Afghanistan, marking a significant step in its expansion into South Asia. Yemeni Foreign Minister Riyad Yassin has rejected Iran's offer to mediate a solution to the crisis in his war-torn country, insisting that Tehran-backed rebels surrender. He said Iran has become a major part of the Yemeni crisis, and those who are a party to the crisis cannot become mediators. The minister also said Yemen's exiled government will not accept negotiations unless the Houthis and pro-Saleh forces lay down arms. Also over the weekend, a powerful explosion rocked the Yemeni capital, Sana'a, as Saudi-led airstrikes targeted suspected weapons caches and missiles owned by the Shiite rebels. Plumes of smoke rose over the Fag Antan area of western Sana'a, where the capital's largest weapons caches were located. The massive explosions shattered windows, sent residents scrambling for shelter, and killed a local TV presenter. The explosions were the most powerful seen in the city since a Saudi-led aid campaign against Iran-allied Shiite rebels known as Houthis began last month. Anti-aircraft fire rattled across the city in response. Australia and Iran will share intelligence to track foreign fighters working with the IS group in Iraq. Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop discussed the threat posed by IS in talks with her Iranian counterpart Javad Zarif in Tehran during her first visit to Tehran. Bishop is Australia's highest-ranking official to visit Iran in 12 years. Describing the talks as a positive engagement on bilateral, regional and global issues that concern both countries, Bishop said that they discussed in detail their roles in tackling IS in Iraq and Syria. Tensions are running high between Kurdish forces and IS militants in North Iraq as the Iraqi security forces continued their battles against the IS in Anbar province. The town of Guer, dozens of kilometers from Kurdistan region's capital Erbil, has been an important confronting place since IS controlled the city of Mosul in June of 2014. Almost all the residents have fled the town. Kurdish forces set up a base at one end of a river crossing bridge in the west of Guer, where on the other side of the river, about 200 to 300 meters, is the IS-held Kanhash village, 40 kilometers southeast of Mosul city. And according to the Kurdish soldiers, they are usually attacked by the IS militants hidden in the forests near the river. In order to reduce direct clashes and casualties, both the Kurdish forces and IS bombed the Cross River Bridge in many sections. Japan's minister in charge of TPP negotiations and the U.S. trade representative have begun a second day of talks in Tokyo on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Pact. Akira Amari and the U.S. trade representative, Michael Froman, later spoke to reporters before the meeting. He said the meeting marked the climax for the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations between Japan and the United States. He said he will negotiate to secure Japan's national interests while narrowing the differences between the two nations. Monday's talks are expected to focus on rice and cars. The U.S. wants Japan to expand the annual quota for U.S. rice imports by 175,000 tons. Japan is trying to keep rice imports to a minimum, saying that the staple food should be given special consideration. Tokyo, meanwhile, wants Washington to immediately scrap the tariffs on Japanese auto parts. But the United States is calling for a deferment of that issue. The two countries are also at odds over how to deal with automobile trade disputes. The Premier of the Australian state of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, reassured the public that it was safe to attend the upcoming Anzac Day ceremonies after an alleged plot to attack the event in Melbourne was foiled. Local officials also confirmed on the arrest of 5 Australian teenagers on suspicion of plotting an attack at a Veterans' Day ceremony, which is also alleged to be targeting police officers. Speaking to local media, Andrews said the plot was a serious and significant threat, and he praised the work of the police force, of which they believed was inspired by the IS group and was to have involved aged weapons. The Premier also added that state and federal police had put the best security arrangements in place for the annual memorial. The suspects included 4 18-year-olds and 1 19-year-old boy who were arrested in Melbourne. Anzac Day is the annual April 25th commemoration of the 1915 Gallipoli landings, the first major military action fought by the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps during the First World War. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Pakistan for a 2-day visit in which he is expected to announce $45 billion worth of investment projects in energy and infrastructure development. Xi is leading a large business delegation and is expected to oversee the signing of investment agreements in the energy and transportation industries, part of Beijing's plan for a China-Pakistan economic corridor. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the country's top civilian and military leadership received the visiting president at an Air Force base near the capital, Islamabad. The president was given a military honor guard and a fighter jet flyby. Sharif said the visit will open a new chapter in bilateral relations. China and Pakistan have long maintained close political and military relations based partly on mutual antipathy towards neighbor India. However, stronger China-India ties have challenged that perception, and Xi's visit seems intended to reassure Pakistan that relations remain robust. China is a leading arms supplier to Pakistan and has sought its help in combating anti-Chinese separatists reportedly hiding in the country's lawless tribal areas. China is also eager to enlist Pakistan's help in stabilizing Afghanistan as U.S. and international troops wind down their presence there. A strong undersea earthquake has struck an area between Taiwan and southern Japan, sparking a house fire that killed a person outside of Taiwan's capital and causing Japanese authorities to evacuate some school children as a tsunami precaution. The quake triggered an advisory for a tsunami of up to 1 meter in Japan that was lifted after just over an hour. The 6.8 magnitude quake caused buildings in the Taiwanese capital Taipei to sway, and people there rushed into the streets. Footage from Taiwanese television broadcaster TBS showed signs and lights swinging from the ceiling of a newsroom in Taipei. A person was killed in a house fire in the Taipei suburb of Xinzhuang that was sparked by the explosion of an electricity transformer box due to the quake. 1 other person was injured in that fire. Japan's meteorological agency said the quake's epicenter was at a shallow point in seas east of Taiwan and south of Okinawa near the Yonaguni Islands. It said no tsunami was detected. Taiwan's worst earthquake was a magnitude 7.3 trembler that struck the center of the island in September of 1999, killing 2,415 people.
Welcome back. Primetime Asia will also include several fascinating innovations and technological breakthroughs. To start us off, test flights were successfully conducted for two home-developed ground effect wing ships. Recently, in waters of the city of Haikou, China, the 32nd Weifang International Kites Festival in Shandong Province opened this week, attracting kite flying enthusiasts from around the world. Japan's Toyota Motor has unveiled new hybrid models for the Chinese market that use locally developed motors and batteries. More from Japan, children have been learning about the history of a designated World Cultural Heritage Site, Tajima Yahe Sericulture Farm, and have made a candy version of the farmhouse. But first, some news from Peru. Stay on for full reports.
South Korean President Park Geun-hye has arrived in Peru ahead of a 4-day visit aimed to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. She was greeted by Peru's Foreign Minister Ana Maria Sanchez at a military airport in Lima. Peru is Park's second stop in her four-nation tour. The South Korean leader will be expected to meet her Peruvian counterpart, President Ollanta Humala, early next week. Both delegations will be discussing ways to bolster economic ties and bilateral relations between both countries. Test flights were successfully conducted for two home-developed group effect wing ships, or WIG, recently in waters of the city of Haikou, capital of South China's Hainan province. This model of WIG, a type of vessel capable of flying above water surface on a dynamic air cushion, can fly for more than 2 hours at speeds around 200 kilometers per hour, 3 to 5 meters above the surface. As it takes off and lands on water surface, it can save a lot for constructing an airfield or airport. This is the first time in the world that two WIGs fly together because the vehicles were well maintained. High-speed transportation without the need for an airport is the great advantage of the WIG. Although it has yet to enter widespread use, it has huge potentials in such fields as tourism, cargo shipping, maritime search and rescue, and military operations. According to the manufacturer, manufacturing a WIG costs about $2.6 million. China will lower the Reserve Requirement Ratio, or RRR, for all financial institutions by 1% point to 18.5% starting on Monday, the People's Bank of China announced on Sunday. An extra 1% point RRR cut will be given to commercial banks for agricultural services and an additional reduction of 2 percentage points to the Agricultural Development Bank of China. The central bank will further lower RRR by 0.5% points for eligible banks that lend to a certain amount of loans to agricultural borrowers or small and micro businesses. In general, the RRR cut was put forward in response to the complicated economic situation. It will help maintain economic growth, especially this year when economic growth is facing a stressful decline. At the same time, the cut provides special support for some special areas, such as agriculture and small and micro businesses. From the perspective of structure, the cut also aims to improve structure. So RRR cut meets the demands of growth stabilization and structure improvement, said Zhao Zijun, Deputy Dean of the School of Finance at Renmin University of China. As there are 125 trillion yuan deposits in Chinese banks by the end of March, the 1 percentage point RRR cut will unleash estimated liquidity of at least 1 trillion yuan into the market, according to analysts. The People's Bank of China had already lowered the RRR for all financial institutions by 0.5 percentage point this year, starting from February the 5th. The 32nd Weifang International Kites Festival has opened in China, attracting kite flying enthusiasts from around the world to the country's East Shandong province. Colorful kites of all sizes and variations filled the sky on the festival's opening day. Tu Quanhua, deputy director of the Macau Hippo kite team, said his kites represent freedom and happiness. The city of Weifang is believed to be the home of kites. The history of kites there has also won admiration from foreign visitors. A total of 30 kite-flying teams from 67 countries and regions participated in the championship. The weekend's activity is expected to attract around 100,000 kite enthusiasts for the feast. Japan's Toyota Motor has unveiled new hybrid models for the Chinese market that uses locally developed motors and batteries. Toyota unveiled hybrid models of the Corolla and Levin ahead of the opening of a motor show in Shanghai. The firm plans to begin selling the two models in China later this year. The automaker developed and produced motors, batteries and other key parts for these models at its research center in Jiangsu province in eastern China. This is the first time Toyota has developed basic hybrid auto parts outside Japan. Toyota has sold 7.5 million hybrid vehicles so far in the global market. But it has suffered sluggish sales in China, the world's largest car market, selling only 90,000 autos by late last year. Toyota executives say they hope to boost sales by reducing prices and using locally made components. They also expect more people to buy hybrid cars as the Chinese government plans to strengthen fuel efficiency rules to help reduce air pollution. Japan's experimental magnetically levitating train, or maglev, has managed to break the new world speed record with a top speed of 603 kilometers per hour. The Japanese Central Japan Railway said the train, which floats on powerful superconducting magnets above its track, managed to hit its top speed of 603 kilometers per hour on an experimental track in Yamanashi Prefecture in central Japan. Yasukazu Endo, the head of the research center run by Central Japan Railways, also known as JR Kokai, said that the high-speed tests are ways of testing the limits of the train. Once in operation, the train will run at lower speeds. The maglev currently also holds the Guinness World Record title for fastest magnetic train at 581 kilometers per hour that it managed to gain in 2003. The company is planning to reapply to Guinness records for its new world speed record. Japan's maglev route between Tokyo and Nagoya is set to open in 2027 at a cost of $61.4 billion, and also the Nagoya-Osaka route is expected to be completed by 2045. Children in a town just north of Tokyo have been learning about the history of the Tajima Yahe Sri Culture Farm, designated as the World Cultural Heritage Site last year. They also made a candy version of the farmhouse. More than 160 people, including children and parents, participated in the event in Gunma Prefecture. Organizers say they wanted local children to learn that the Tajima Yahe Sri Culture Farm is said to be a prototype of modern Sri Culture farms. UNESCO listed the farmhouse as a World Cultural Heritage Site along with the Tomioka Silk Mill in 2014. After the lesson, children made roof tiles for a candy version of the farmhouse. They made an adhesive from liquid sugar and powdered ash to fix the tiles in place. The candy model was 1/15 the size of the actual farmhouse.
And that concludes for this week's edition of the Primetime Asia. Till we meet again, same time next week with other interesting news and features. To watch more on Primetime Asia portal video, you can visit our website at www.rtbnews.rtb.gov.bn. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wishing you all a pleasant week ahead and good night.